just been bit by something. You ever been bit by something? Absolute, really itching. Look, I'm itching now. That's made me itchy even more, saying itching. Hey, buongiorno and welcome to the My Way of Thinking podcast, hosted by me, Lee Greeno, here live from the Man Cave every week. Now today I'm speaking to Jon Francois, love that name. Jon and me connected through his podcast, which is the Anything Show, and it's a great show. It's always about relevant topics. He's had some massive guests on there. Love this guy, and we just connected and he said he'd come on. Now we have a great old chat all about America and everything else that's going on over there and what he's up to on his podcast. You're going to love this chat. So remember, there's only 4 rules on the show: 1, no bullshitting; 2, no judging; 3, no negativity; and 4, have fun. Okay, let's get on with it. Here's my interview with the brilliant Jon Francois. So welcome to My Way of Thinking podcast, and today we have a very special guest. It is the one and the only Mr. Jon Francois. Woo!
I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome, Jon. You all right?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, man. I mean, I have no idea. Y'all have to remind me how we met, Lee, because I meet so many people. But it's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I was thinking the same thing. I'll have guests on. I'll think, how did I connect? And there's always a story there, but it's just trying to remember which one. I know it was something to do with your podcast, and I was listening to it. I thought it was quite funny. Maybe I messaged you, or I don't know.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. So I host a weekly podcast called The Anything Show with Jon Francois, and of course, it's available on all podcast platforms. And I guess you happened to listen to one of the episodes and reached out, and now here you are.
Yeah, it's great. And that's one thing about the pandemic and everything. I just reach out. When I started the podcast, someone was saying you've got to have a niche, and I'm terrible at having a niche because I just enjoy talking to people. I don't care, I don't care what followers you've got or influence. I just like interesting people, fun people, and so I just can't. If I listen in summer or see something on the TV, I'll just reach out and people come on. So yeah, it should be good. Now, we were just talking about the weather, and over here in the UK, it's red hot. As you can see, my nose is burnt. Because in the UK, the weather is pretty unpredictable. Sometimes we have good summers, but we're rubbish at things like buying sun cream. You'll see loads of pictures in the UK, people sitting out of it. I've seen one guy, he fell asleep with his face mask on. So it looked like he had a white and 2 strings here, which I thought, that is so UK. But anyway, so we'll talk about you and your journey and your podcast and everything like that. Now, when I start, I always like to talk about something to do with where you're from. And I've interviewed loads of people from the USA, but never from Vermont. So I thought, right, let's get some interesting facts. Now, sometimes I'll do this and the person's like, no, that's not true. So I do apologise now. This is Google and nothing to do with me.
Okay.
So I'll read the fact. You let me know if there is some truth in it. So the first one is Vermont's the largest producer of maple syrup in the US, producing over 500,000 gallons a year. Is that correct?
I believe you are correct. Now, I'm not originally based in Vermont. I moved here 3 years ago for a job. Yeah. But yeah, all I knew about Vermont going in was maple syrup and Bernie Sanders.
Is it everywhere, maple syrup? Is it like you go in the supermarket, it's like milk? Pretty much anywhere you go in Vermont, you can get like what they call real maple syrup. I stick to my cheap store brand syrup because I just don't see the difference in taste between store brand and maple. I'm not paying $40 for syrup. I'm sorry. It's $40.
I'm exaggerating, but basically because it's maple syrup and in Vermont, that they will charge you based on that.
Wow.
And also we're known for Ben & Jerry's. I don't know if you have Ben & Jerry's ice cream.
Yeah. I don't think I put that down as a fact, but apparently it started in Vermont, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Vermont's finest, as it's called. And yeah, I mean, I think here the price is a little bit more reasonable because I guess it's like our home state, but you try to get Ben and Jerry's anywhere outside of Vermont and you're paying a pretty penny.
So is everybody obese there, or?
You know what? I am not going to dispute that.
Ben and Jerry with maple syrup on. Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just that. It's just that we are a very cold state. Yeah. And if you are not active in winter sports like skiing, snowboarding, whatever, yeah. It's easy to stay indoors and pack on those pounds. And I would imagine during the pandemic, there's been a lot of pounds packing. Yes. But yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, we have obese people, we have skinny people. I'm pretty sure, the UK has its share of obesity and skinny.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah. We do. Right then. Okay, that's okay. That first one is correct. Right, let's go for the next one. Lake Champlain, located primarily in Vermont with parts in New York and Quebec, isn't as big as the Great Lakes, but it does have its own monster, or so the legend goes. Apparently, Champ is said to be a friendly 80-foot-long beast monster and have a head like a snake or a dog. There was a famous photo, apparently, which was taken in 1977. Do you know about this?
I have no idea about that. That's an interesting fact. I might have to correct you on the pronunciation, though. I think you're. Oh. I think you mean Lake Champlain. Is
it?
Yeah. Champlain. Yeah. And you know what? Hey, not coming from Vermont, I screwed up the pronunciation of Lake Memphremagog, which is a word I still cannot spell to this day. So I'm with you, man. The pronunciations of some of these lakes are wild.
Yeah. Well, I just had a look at the photo. The reason I brought it up is because we have Scotland, we have Loch Ness. Do you know, you've heard of the Loch Ness Monster here?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a very similar photo many years ago of the Loch Ness, and if you look this up, I'll put a photo on the video, and this photo of Champ looks very similar. It could be basically anything, but no, apparently it's an 80-foot monster. There you go. Right, okay. Now, this one does interest me. So it's also one of the most progressive states. It was the first to grant women partial voting rights in 1880 and abolish slavery and legislate same-sex marriage. Is that true?
Well, I'm learning as much as you are right now. That seems to be about right. I mean, it's strange because I live in a very conservative part of Vermont. Right. So when you live in this area, it can be hard to remember that it is very much a blue state. Of course, we're known for having Bernie Sanders as our. I think he's our senator. Yeah, I think he's our senator. Yeah, and he's obviously very much a progressive socialist figure. I think that sounds about right to me. I mean, I think someone said it best in terms of like the sort of conservative and liberal togetherness of Vermont. I think Vermont is the state where hippies and rednecks just unite. That's the saying.
Right, okay, cool.
About Vermont. So I mean, if you depending on where you are, you may run into someone who I don't know supports Trump, and you may run into someone who supports Biden or Bernie or whatever.
Yeah. So, I quite like that. I think we're too over here in the UK at the minute. There is quite a lot of division with loads of different things, politics, left, right. And I spoke to someone the other day who we talk about politics. I don't like politics too much, but I think the problem this day and age is no one's allowed to be a bit of both. You know what I mean? Right. We can all have different opinions, can't we? But no, you have to be left or right. Well, no, actually, I can have different opinions on different things. I don't have to pick a side. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're grown-ups.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I describe myself as pretty much in the center when it comes to politics. There are a lot of things that I agree with on the left, but there are also some things that I agree with on the right.
Mm.
And I think what is missing in politics is sort of that, center middle ground ideology. And unfortunately, now it's become like wrestling. It's like you said, it's either you're on the far left or you're on the far right, and then you just fight until the death.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it don't help when you have divisive people like Trump who are so loud and outlandish. I mean, he's not even a politician really, but he's an interesting character. Love or hate him, he's interesting, isn't he? He's straight talking, and I think. But because he's so forthright, people are either or they hate him. Do you see what I mean? It's very divisive.
Yeah. He certainly had an interesting 4 years in the White House. And I mean, look, as someone who likes show business, I'm in the entertainment business as you are. I also found him very fascinating and hilarious on a lot of days. He always met the headlines every day, and the guy really knows how to market himself. So you got to give him credit for that. I mean, he, like you said, he did play into the division that this country was feeling. And, now it's kind of shocking how we've gone back to this sort of, I mean, at least here in the US, I don't know how it is in the UK, but at least here in the US, I feel like, we've gone back to this normal boring when it comes to, like with Biden, it's like, wait, what? He's not making headlines. He's not, making like controversial tweets every day. Like, what? Our democracy is not being threatened. Like, it's just normal, boring, everyday presidential stuff, and it's just bizarre,
Yeah, over here in the UK, we have Boris Johnson, and he is quite he's quite an outlandish figure. I mean, he's nowhere near as bad as Trump, but he does, he can bumble along and make silly comments now and again. And the problem is as well with the pandemic, the government are never going to win. They're always going to, they're trying their best, but they're always going to piss some people off. Some people are going to say you're doing it wrong. Some people are going to say you're doing it right. We're in a pandemic, so I suppose, I disagree with some of the things they've done, but they're going off the science, I hope, but who knows? It's not an easy situation, I suppose.
Yeah. How is the UK handling the pandemic? I've always wondered, because I sometimes forget that the pandemic is a worldwide thing. How are you with the pandemic?
Well, when we first had lockdown, some people said we left it a bit late because numbers were starting to skyrocket. So we had a total lockdown, and we started getting quite good at pulling the numbers back, wearing masks, social distancing. And then the problem was they started releasing and letting us go into different tier systems. So if you were tier 1, you had freedom. If you were tier 2, you had some freedoms and had to wear a mask still. And if you were tier 3, you were basically locked down. But the thing is, they do these things, but only one place to begin with was tier 1, and it's an Isle of Man, which is out the way, and no one already lives there. So It's sort of, they offer these things to try and make us think, wow, we're getting back to normal. But the reality is it's still crap. Currently, so we had a second lockdown, and then we let an Indian variant come in. So the cases are going up again. And they've started bringing out a new system for going abroad now. So a traffic light system. And again, I'd rather the government turn around and say, you can't go abroad. Instead of pissing about and saying, oh, we've got this, basically, the UK is getting better, but you can't go abroad this year. But instead, what they do is they sort of offer us a carrot. With reality is we're not going to be able to go abroad.
Wow. Yeah. Here in the US, it looks like we're winding down. I don't know what coverage you guys give us in the UK, but it looks like we're winding down. We're getting vaccinated by the numbers every day. And actually, Vermont, where I am right now, it is the first state in the country to lift all COVID-19 restrictions. We did that the other day. Our governor here, he said that if 80% of the state is vaccinated, he will lift all restrictions, and he met that goal. And now here we are. So, going, again, along with the whole, Trump-Biden transition, it's also bizarre that we're getting to this point where life is beginning to go back to normal. We're having outdoor events. We don't really have to wear a mask anymore, not so much social distancing. So, I don't know, man, it's a new day, and hopefully things will progress as well in the UK.
Yeah, but compared to some other countries, one thing that they've done really well is the vaccine rollout here as well.
Oh, good.
They absolutely went for it when we started the vaccine rollout. I think we're talking about 20-year-olds. We're on about kids being vaccinated in a few months' time. So they've really put everybody's got involved and volunteered. That's gone really well, because that's the only way out of this, really, is getting as many people vaccinated as possible, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if we didn't have so many anti-vaxxers
here we go.
We would probably get out of this pandemic faster. Now, granted, I mean, I think Biden said like maybe a good 60 or 70% of adults have had at least one dose of the vaccine, so that is good. But yeah, especially here in Vermont, where there are a lot of conservative areas, I have to deal with people who say that the vaccine will turn them into a zombie and it will cause it.
Yeah, into a cabbage. Yeah,
and cabbage. Yeah, so what are you going to do? And it's funny because those same people will be like, oh yeah, like I feel more comfortable going out and doing normal things, and I say to them, well, it's because people are being vaccinated. So
yeah, exactly. And I understand in some ways people don't want to be told what to do, but the reality is this pandemic, we have been told what to do because it's killing people. And I suppose, thank God it hasn't really affected me, but if it had and someone I know had died from it, I'd be the first one to say, let's get vaccinated. And I think you've got to think of it that way instead of selfishly thinking, I don't want it, I'm not having it, I don't know what it is. Well, hold on, some guy's struggling to breathe and he's going to die from this. But,
Yeah, actually, interesting you say that, because my co-host on the Anything Show with Jon Francois, my podcast, Maciel Hernandez, unfortunately, her mom passed from COVID.
Oh,
and she's been vaccinated. So, yeah, she more than anyone will probably be like, okay, like, don't stop thinking about yourself and what you think the vaccine will do to you, and think of how you can prevent other people getting sick and spreading the COVID and all that stuff. So
definitely. Okay, well, that's more fun facts for today. There was other boring ones, but I thought I wouldn't bring them up. So I got most of them right, I think, anyway. So yes, John, let's start at the beginning, because you said you'd only been at Vermont for 3 years. So I'm just interested in, and looking, I had a quick look at about sort of the things you've been up to and that. It sounds like you've always been in media. Tell us a little bit about growing up and how that led you to go on that path.
Well, growing up, I've always loved entertainment, show business, whether it's television, radio, movies. I always was that kid that would rather just sit at home and watch TV or go to the movie theater or listen to the radio in the car, rather than go to school or even socialize with friends outside in my neighborhood. And I think it wasn't until high school, where I had the confidence to actually do something about this interest of mine. So I took some acting classes, appeared in some theater productions in high school. And when I graduated, I thought that, professional acting, that was where my life was going to take me. And, some personal stuff came up during college, and the acting program that I was in was kind of too emotionally intense for me. So dropped out of that. And while I was trying to figure myself out during my semester off, I fell in love with broadcasting. And that is, basically, radio and doing my, I used to produce a show in my hometown of West Hartford, Connecticut, a public access television show. So I did that, and then eventually went back to school for something related to communications. And I graduated. I did a radio mentorship in New York City. I got my first radio job in my home state of Connecticut here in the U.S., and then worked in Iowa for a while, and now here I am in Vermont. So I mean, I guess there was just a lot of steps that kind of led me to where I am today. Eventually going a few years into doing traditional commercial mainstream radio, I really wanted to sort of get back into owning my content. And that's kind of where the Anything Show with Jon Francois came about. It kind of started in college, but as time went by, it's basically developed into a radio show / podcast. So now it's, both a show that you can hear on radio stations throughout the country, and with the help of my determination and with the help of a good friend of mine who's also a podcaster, it's also a show that you could get on, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. And what I've always loved about the entertainment formats, the format that I do with my show, is just how you could have such a variety to keep people's attention. I've always been influenced by late night talk shows, daytime talk shows, because there's just so much going on. Morning radio shows, so much going on. I mean, and the Anything Show, that's what it is. It's how much entertaining different things can we pack inside an hour. And if you listen to my show every week on the podcast platforms, you'll get trending headlines, you'll get viral videos. I give away $100 gift cards and shot glasses and keychains every month. In fact, this Sunday for Father's Day, June 20th, I'm giving away cash and merchandise to a lucky listener. And yeah, we have Hollywood gossip. I interview all sorts of celebrities, from say Cousin Sal from Jimmy Kimmel Live to the Pink Lady of Hollywood, K Sarah. So it's really a dream to be able to produce essentially just a fun morning radio-esque variety show like that every week, and have people accepting it the way they do. And I mean, I guess in a rambling nutshell, that's kind of my you've had some really brilliant guests on.
One thing that interests me is you said you do the radio and the podcast. Now, I run a radio show all about film, because I love film, of course, and I'm a filmmaker. But the only thing with radio is you have to be sometimes impartial. You're not allowed to sort of swear or tell your point of. You've got to be careful. And one of the reasons I started the podcast is because I was like, actually, I want to have an opinion. I want to swear if I want to swear, and I want to say, what I think. How does that transfer with your show? Because I've listened to bits of your show, and it's quite funny, and you can get quite, for radio. Dirty. Do you share that on radio, or is that a totally separate show, or is it more? Do they allow that in America?
Okay, so the few radio stations that I'm on, they are FCC regulated. So yes, it is advisable not to use profanity or to be explicitly sexual. The stations that I'm on, they are not commercial radio stations. They are volunteer-run, smaller, low-power community radio stations. So in other words, stations that don't pay me for the content. I basically reach out to these stations that have a low signal and could always use programming. And if they're interested in my show, great. Because there's such a low listenership, and also, again, like, advertising dollars are not going into it because it's not commercial. There is a lot more freedom to get away with the occasional, like, a-hole or making a sex joke on these radio stations. And sure, I've had one of our station affiliates move me to a later slot at night because of certain things that I've said. But other than that, I mean, it's really no different than, as you mentioned, doing a show purely in the podcasting space where there's no regulations. It's so liberating. You could curse, you could make dirty jokes, you could say what's on your mind about politics, things like that. So I totally get what you mean about that. I mean, there's just nothing like it, you know? There's nothing like uncensored and completely yourself.
Yeah, I think it can be quite frustrating at times when you're trying to get a conversation, because I used to get quite a lot of guests on, and you're just getting into it like we are now, and then you got to play music, and you got to play more music, and you got to play music again. And it's like, for Christ's sake, I just want a 10-minute conversation. It's very... And I suppose it's because it's consumer fed, isn't it? You know, like you say, they're trying to make money, they're trying to be commercial. But I think one thing about the pandemic, which is great, is there's more podcasts popping up, more people are trying it, and more people are having a voice. So it can only be a good thing, can't it, John?
You know, it can be a good thing and a bad thing.
Why is that then, John?
Well, okay. It's a tricky situation. I mean, I've always said about podcasting is that the great thing about it is that anyone can do it, and the bad thing about it is that anyone can do it.
Yeah, true. What are you trying to say, John?
Well, no. Obviously, you're fantastic. I mean, I'm not talking about you. I mean, going to the great part of it, because anybody can do it, you have a chance to find so many different quality, top-notch podcasts that you otherwise wouldn't have found in the mainstream space.
Yeah.
But then because again anyone can do it, you'll
there's a lot of shit out there. I know exactly what you're saying.
yeah. Like podcasts where they're just like taking their phone and recording from their car and talking about, I don't know, their toothbrush or wrestling for an hour, stuff like that. So it's 50-50 in terms of the easy accessibility to create a podcast.
Yeah, I do understand what you mean. I mean, it's similar with the filmmaking business at the minute, because you can make a film basically on a phone now. So it's sort of everybody's doing it, and that sort of thins out the playing field, and it makes it more difficult in some senses. But I think you've just got to get over that and just think, do what's right for you. And hope that what you're doing is going the right way. But I do know what you mean. Yeah, I've had a few people say, "Will you listen to my show?" And I've listened. I'm like, "What can I say?" It's
I mean, I will say that going back to your point, do what's right for you. If this is something that you love, then do it to the best of your ability, and you can easily do it to the best of your ability every day. Like, you don't have to have some mainstream corporate guy, giving you the approval. Like, if you have a phone, if you have a tablet, if you have a computer, if you have any recording device, you can make it happen, which is so great. I love the DIY age. And then you have this, you also have to remind yourself that you are basically one of billions or zillions of people wanting to have a podcast. So because of that, it can be harder to find an audience. It's, I think basically there's the 99% of podcasters, which is like you and myself. I mean, we're, trying to find our audiences every day and, however we can. And then of course you have those 1%ers like, I don't know, Joe Rogan, who has millions of listeners every episode and knows what he's doing. So
I think the big thing for me is we all have to start somewhere, but people are putting the effort in. So they're learning to edit, they're getting a half decent microphone. I think it's when you hear something that's just so poor and they're putting sponsorship on there and you're like, just get the basics rotten advert pops. What's going on here? Because, microphones are not that expensive. You can do it on your laptop. You just need to put a bit of effort in, at least put a bit of effort in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of podcasts that have distorted audio, where like the mic is turned up too high, or either they're talking too loud and their mic distorted. I've listened to quite a few of those, and unfortunately, it distracts from like the actual content of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like you said, getting the basics down would be very helpful.
Yeah. Now, some of the guests you get on, John, I was quite impressed with some of the guests. Tell us a little bit about how you go about that and some of the big guests that you've had on there on your show.
Well, fortunately, through the commercial radio station I work for here in Vermont, I'm able to have a connection with Premier Radio Networks, which is just this big sort of syndication radio conglomerate thingy-majig that often offers opportunities to interview guests ranging from actors to musicians to authors, etc. And yeah, I mean, like it seems like I've interviewed a wide variety of people. I mean, some of the interviews that come to mind, the movie Greenland, which starred Gerard Butler and Morena Baccarin. I interviewed the director from that movie, Rick.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was quite a good film as well. The ending. Why they did that ending, but yeah. I know. Yeah.
Oh, don't spoil it for me. Huh?
Oh, you've not seen it? Oh, you've not seen it? You interviewed the director? What's going on?
I've seen a clip or two, but I can't see the whole movie. Hey, look, in our business, when we have to do this grind, we don't have time to get all the content. So I interviewed that guy, Chris Lowell, who is an actor and photographer, and he appeared in the movie Promising Young Woman, which actually won the Oscar for
great film.
Best Original Screenplay. Yep. So,
who did he play?
I think he played Carey Mulligan's love interest, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I know who you mean. Yeah, he's a great actor. You interviewed him. That's a great interview, that is.
I did. I was so lucky to interview him. And actually, are you familiar with the show The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Yeah, Will Smith. That's pretty much what catapulted him to fame. So I'm going to be interviewing the actress that played Hilary Banks, Will Smith's sister, or not Will, but Will Smith's cousin on that show. Yeah. So I'll be interviewing Karen Parsons. So yeah, thanks to Premier Radio Networks, I have access to a wide variety of guests. Selena, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Selena, the series on Netflix, the show about the Mexican singer Selena. I interviewed the actress that played Selena's killer. Yeah. So, just I mean, you name it, and I think have interviewed them.
I'll tell you what I find interesting, John, is interviewing not the main person, but the person behind the scenes, or the person that's been there and can tell you all the stories. Because sometimes, you can talk to the main person, but they've got an agenda, whereas you speak to like the caterer or the makeup woman, and you get a real deal. Do you notice that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, immediately what comes to mind, I was actually, before we got started, I was watching comedian Paul Mooney, who recently passed. I was watching him on the Howard Stern show, and he was best known as a writer for comedian Richard Pryor, who was just and I mean, Paul Mooney, obviously not of the same stature as Richard Pryor, but because he was side by side with Richard Pryor, he could tell you stories. Apparently, Richard Pryor and Dolly Parton hooked up. Apparently,
Jesus Christ.
No, apparently Richard Pryor was sniffing cocaine on a Miles Davis album, and Paul Mooney just kind of brushed it off and just went on his way. I mean, it's just there's so many stories, and like you said, the most interesting stories tend to come from the people who witnessed the thing. With the famous people. So
that sounds amazing. Yeah, Richard Pryor, what a legend. Every now and then I'll go back and watch his show.
I actually had to play him back in high school. Yeah. As part of a high school acting class, we had to take on the persona of a dead celebrity icon. So I guess I chose Richard Pryor, and I had to be Pryor all day and write a monologue as him. And it wasn't easy, but the research that I did going into it was really fun.
Hey, you know what, John? I think where would he stand now, though? Because everything is like we talked earlier about division and PC, everything's politically correct. I think some of these older comedians would really struggle now, wouldn't they, with the material?
Oh, sure. I mean, Richard Pryor. I mean, it's tough to say because. Yeah. I mean, I think Richard Pryor could get in trouble here and there today. He did have some thought-provoking things to say about race in America.
Yeah.
So that could save him. But I mean, you look at someone like Eddie Murphy, for instance, who was a great stand-up in his own right. You look at his stand-up specials, Delirious and Raw, and they are great, but probably should be best left in the 80s. Because there is a lot. There's a lot of there's quite a bit of ethnic humor and homophobic humor that probably wouldn't pass today. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that comedians of a different era might not make it so much in this cancel culture era, and it's sad. Because I remember Kevin Hart, the comedian Kevin Hart, say the other day that he hates cancel culture because it basically doesn't allow you to be human and make mistakes and learn from them. Yeah. And I agree with that. I think that it's just kind of sad that one tweet or one joke that I did in my stand-ups 15 years ago is going to completely ruin my career today.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Instead of giving me the chance to say, okay, maybe what I said was wrong and I apologize and I'm learning from that and I want to do better. So
yeah, I mean, you imagine if when you were 18, if you knew what you knew, now, and that there's a record of that, and someone's going to bring it up when you said something when you didn't know much better. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Really, it's. They did it with James Gunn, didn't they? James Gunn, he was, for a while, they took him off Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, the follow-up with that. And
yeah, I did hear about that. Yeah. Now that's like, what was that? Just sexual harassment related stuff, or was something else?
I can't remember, but I'm sure I've seen one of the tweets and just thought, oh my God, he's, where does it end? I don't really know, but it's a worrying time. If you're a celebrity, it's a worrying time. You've got to be so careful. Your PR has got to be, hasn't it? It's got to be on top form.
Oh, sure. So, we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm hoping that cancel culture could be used more of as a learning tool as opposed to just a way to sabotage somebody's career.
Definitely. Yeah.
We'll see.
So where do you see the show going then, John? What would you like to see from it in the future?
My show, The Anything Show with Jon Francois. I would love to I think like any podcaster, I would love to see it grow in listener numbers. I would love to continue to give away the fabulous cash and merchandise that I tend to give away. Right now, I'm getting the show into the movie theater advertising space, and hopefully I'm going to transfer it over to radio station advertising as well. So I'm really trying to broaden the reach of the show as much as possible, and hopefully that'll get it exposed to a wider audience. In terms of the content, I am so thankful to have a co-host in Maciel Hernandez, she's an actress, and she's from New York City, which of course is great for actors. And she is the host of the Black Hole Sun podcast, and her pop culture knowledge and her passion and her energy and her humor is just what I need for my show. So I'm hoping that we continue our partnership from there. I hope I continue to, interview fabulous guests. really, I mean, I just want to continue to learn and grow with this show, because I keep on reminding myself that it is a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I suppose you've just got to. I just enjoy it, and the numbers come second, and if it does well, it does well, and you've just got to play the long game, I suppose. And as long as you're enjoying it, that's the main.
Yeah, I think if anybody got into the podcast space just to get a lot of listeners or to get a lot of sponsorship money, they would quit just like that, because it really takes time. You have to appreciate and enjoy the process. And fortunately, what's kept me going is that I just love the grind of coming up with relevant, entertaining conversation week after week for an audience, and then wash, rinse, repeat for the next week.
Yeah, wash, rinse, repeat. I think the good thing is now, one thing that's happened with the pandemic is that we can interview people from around the world, and it makes people a lot more accessible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Absolutely. I mean, just talking to you from the UK. I mean, I've interviewed a couple of guests from the UK, and to think that maybe before the pandemic, the guests that I could have access to, maybe I can only have access to if they came over here, or I came over to them. The fact that from my little base in Vermont, I can interview anybody from like the UK or here in the States, maybe anywhere from California to Utah to Oregon, whatever. It really gives you a really interesting, colorful worldview of what's going on outside of your own space.
Yeah. Oh, you interviewed couple of people from Australia, which was interesting.
Nice.
It was interesting to find out about how the lockdown had gone there, and the cultural differences, which would never have happened without lockdown. So, you've got to look at it that way. Now, part of the show that I do, we do cover quite a lot of different themes, but mental health is one that pops up quite a lot. How do you think people are getting on mental health-wise through the lockdown, especially in America? Because what I've noticed here is people that never usually suffer with mental health, because this second lockdown, are really sort of saying, look, I've had enough now. And I just think it's interesting that everybody is sort of suffered in one way or another. It doesn't have to be, really terrible mental health where you're thinking about suicide, things like that. It can just be, it's really changed your mood in certain situations. Have you noticed that with people around you and things like that?
Yeah, I'd say to a certain degree. I think the pandemic has maybe done two things for mental health. One, it has forced us to stay inside, and I think Americans, we tend to be a very on the go kind of people. Like, you get up, you go to work, you come home, the next day, blah blah blah. So the pandemic has just completely fucked that up, and that can easily just make someone either sad or angry or depressed or whatever. The other part of it is that because we were so locked down for such a period of time, we can't run away from our problems. I feel like to a certain degree, the on the go thing is an easy way to just avoid whatever issues you may have. So, being locked down in a house for 2-3 weeks, whatever the case may be, or a year, really gives you time to sit with your thoughts. And, I'm sure we've heard about marriages and then divorces that have happened during the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, me and my wife haven't divorced just yet. Touch wood.
Oh, God. Cross fingers, that doesn't happen. Oh, my God. Oh, Lord. Friendships that might have ended, things like that. I mean, I struggle with anxiety and depression, and I actually recently just got on antidepressants. And what I found, prior to the pandemic, I loved, going out to bars and concerts and going to the movies and doing whatever I can to be socially active. And during the pandemic, I found that with no activity going on, I've been more anxious to leave the house and get things going. So I may fall into that category of Americans who are just like, holy shit, like I have to sit with my thoughts, like what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting when you go from, oh man, like there's so many things to do, and sure, I'll have a lazy day here and there. And then when you're being told to stay inside and not do anything, it's just like, at least for me, no, I don't want to stay and do nothing. That sounds frightening. I got to go out and do something. So during the pandemic, I think maybe that's when I've been my most active, because I think it's been a way to not sit with my thoughts too much and really get hooked on them. And thankfully, along with meditation and talking to family, friends, my girlfriend, I've been doing therapy for the last year, and that has really helped work through what's been going on in my head. So yeah, I mean, it's been quite a year for a lot of us, I believe.
At least it's part of the conversation now, and we can talk about it. Whereas before, I think it was quite a subject that no one wanted to talk about. Whereas I find when I talk to people like yourself, we're a bit more open about it now, because we've all been through it, and myself as a creative, I've always had these different things that I want to be doing, and I'll be doing them. Whereas lockdowns forced me that I can't do some. So I'm starting to overthink things, and you lie in a bed at night and you're thinking, well, I can't do this, but I've got to do it. And you're overthinking everything. And it's like, Jesus Christ.
A classic overthinker. So I know what you mean, man. It's just,
It's and then you think back to before lockdown. I was always busy. I always had things on the go. I was always, people would say to me, you never stop. And that was my way of coping. Mental health wise, that keeps me sane. And my wife will say, you're doing all these things and you don't get paid for them, and why? And it's just, that's the way who I am and how I cope.
Yeah. So this pandemic has allowed us to just kind of sit down for a moment, breathe, and really ourselves. And no, I mean, it's really interesting, the whole thing about mental health, because I often think that when it comes to, like, say, our physical health, like if we have like a broken shoulder or a leg or whatever, usually we won't have much of a problem saying, oh my God, I have a broken shoulder, broken foot, I need to go to the hospital, I need to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think prior to the pandemic, I mean, there was this stigma around mental health where it seems like, saying like, oh, I'm depressed or I'm down or I'm feeling suicidal, like we seemed ashamed to reveal that. Like, just, we want to make it seem like we're okay. And I think it's okay not to be okay. So
yeah, definitely. Now, if people want to find the podcast, or are you on social media, Jon?
Absolutely. So, the Anything Show with Jon Francois. If you love just a big cornucopia chaos of quirky pop culture, headlines, gossip, celebrity interviews, chances to win cash and merchandise, you can listen on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. On social media, you can find us on Facebook.com/The Anything Show. And we're also on Instagram @Anything Show Francois. And I have no idea when this episode of ours is going to be posted. But you have a chance to win $100. Anything Show.
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll put all the links in the show notes anyway. And I always ask my guests for a bit of advice, so it might be best bit of advice you've had or been given, Jon.
What's the best advice I've been given?
Yeah, what do you think? Or something that you could give to people that maybe want to get into media or podcasting?
Do it because you love it, and understand that the only way you can make it, if that's what you're looking for, is patience and persistence. So I would actually say the 3 Ps: passion, patience.
If you have, I like it.
passion for it, if you're patient during the process, and if you persist, releasing content at a certain time or a certain day, like I think if you have those 3 P's, then you are very fitting to be in the media field, because I think those 3 P's, passion, patience, and persistence.
Did you just think of that, John, or did you already heard of it before?
No. It's just something that kind of came to mind. I mean, something that I've kind of thought about a while ago, but yeah, no. I mean, anytime a podcaster will ask me like, "Oh, how do I make it? How do I?" It's for some reason, patience and persistence keeps on coming to mind.
I like that. I've not heard it before, and I love persistence because I've talked about this before, where persistence, especially sort of podcasting and for like filmmaking, it's such a difficult media to get into. You've just got to stick at it, and if you're passionate, you will, and if you're not passionate, you'll give up. And it's the people that are persistent that will get there eventually.
Yeah. And my mom, when I was growing up at home, would always say, like, something about you is that, you're persistent. If you want something, you'll go after it and you'll do anything to get it. And that's something that I hold up pridefully and try to lead by every day.
Oh, good for you. And finally, I ask my guests for a favorite. So it can be a film, it can be a book, absolutely anything, just something accessible. Have you got a favorite, John?
A favorite book or film?
Film, yeah. Anything that just listeners can access.
God, man, because I've been so busy, I've hardly had time to like sit through anything that's like more than a 5-minute YouTube video.
Yeah.
Well, and it could be something completely random.
You can have anything, yeah.
Okay, well, the most recent thing that I sat through that was really entertaining and that took a while, I really enjoyed the documentary on Inside the NBA, which is a comical basketball analysis show on TNT. And, I enjoyed that because I enjoy watching YouTube clips of the show. It's just a form of escapism, just comfort comedy. And I would say if people are interested in that show, great. Go ahead and give that a shot. I mean, as far as like a film, like a traditional film, the movie Boyhood comes to mind.
Oh, classic, yeah.
Yeah, have you? Yeah, so you watched that, and I watched it in theaters when it was in theaters, like maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it's like a 3-hour plus film, but it doesn't feel like 3 hours plus. If you're interested in just a natural progression from childhood to adulthood, really just the story of a human being, the evolution of a human being. So I would say Boyhood and the Inside the NBA 30-year anniversary documentary. Go watch those.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, look, John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Thanks so much. And I do love the podcast. I keep listening to snippets, and it is so funny, and I like it because it's relevant, and you have a lot of opinions on different things, and it's fun, which is the main thing, which is what it's all about. So make sure you stay in touch, and then when you are in the big leagues, just remember.
Just remember the little people. Is that the saying that you're going to get?
Remember the 3 P's. I'll email you and say, John, remember the 3 P's.
Passion, patience, persistence. Yes, absolutely.
All right then, mate. Well, look after yourself. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Lee. I appreciate you having me on your podcast.
No problem, John. Take care. So that's it. Massive thanks again to John for joining me today and for you listening. Make sure you follow the podcast because coming up over the next few months, there are some more extraordinary interviews. The podcast is always streaming. It will be streaming on the usual platforms, including iTunes and Spotify, and also on the video of the chat. The video of the chat. I need to go to bed. The video of the chat is on YouTube as well. Just search My Way of Thinking Podcast and we pop up. Woo! Everywhere. Please leave a rating and subscribe where possible. To keep up to date on social media, Facebook is My Way of Thinking Podcast and Instagram's MWOT Podcast. And finally, if you want to get in touch with me, you'll be a great guest, email me, smallwhatpodcast@aol.com. Okay. Until next time, God bless and take care.